Hey there, everyone. Bradley Jackson with the Tennessee Chamber. I will give it just a few more seconds to make sure everybody kind of gets on, and then we will get kicked off. So on behalf of the Tennessee Chamber and our Government Affairs team, thank you all for joining us for our annual end of session review. This is probably one of the happier ones we are ready to give this year. It was, as you all know, a very active year in the Tennessee General Assembly. Governor Lee really kind of kicked off the legislative session in his State of the State, announcing a number of major initiatives. Kind of most importantly for the Chamber this year was certainly on the franchise tax proposal, on making sure that that was fixed. There was a legal issue that was brought to their attention, but also resulted in a $400 million tax cut for Tennessee companies moving forward. So the Chamber spent a lot of time on that. We also, a lot of bills this session, we'll go through kind of the bill filings, but overall, there were a lot of, problematic bills the Chamber was able to kind of beat back or amend. We had a number of major issues that came up right at the end of session. The legislature was extremely helpful on a number of those. So we ended up getting overall having a good session. One of the larger narratives of session was that tax revenues were certainly down. Currently we're in the 8th month of our 12-month fiscal year, and we're about 400 million below estimate. We look back at last year, we came in over about 2.5 billion and had the prior 2 years. So there's certainly things going on in Tennessee's economy, which no doubt made it a lot more challenging year, I think, in terms of the overall budget. But luckily, Tennessee has been so well managed. They were able to really mitigate any negative effects and were able to fully fund education, higher education, obviously TennCare, TISA, and a number of other things. So, but overall, it was a great year, a very solid year for the Chamber. So I congratulate our Government Affairs team and all of you all that helped, whether it was contacting your legislator, engagement on bills as we've reviewed those bills. As you all know, the Chamber, we go through each and every individual bill that's filed and kind of run it through our committees and determine a position that the Chamber has. So with that said, I'll kind of go ahead and get started. Again, more bills this session, a little bit more than we had seen in the past. It came in about over 1,600 bills. The budget amount was 52 billion, 52.8 billion. Overall, that was not as much as prior years, simply because COVID money had kind of already hit Tennessee's books. So the budget did not include that. There were about 58 bills that we really heavily engaged on, and that was talking to committee members, engaging you all, sending emails, spending direct advocacy time on those. So we thank you all for your assistance on those. The ones that we initiated and were successful on were about 14 out of the 17. Those other 3 we'll be considering next year whether or not we kind of bring them forward, and the dynamics of the Tennessee General Assembly. Luckily, we're able again to say, and I think this is for the 12th consecutive year, that anything the Chamber outright opposed and the business community did failed to proceed, which makes us very thankful that we have a very strong General Assembly, and their engagement with the business community was very helpful. Again, looking at bill filings, you see kind of the overall numbers. They've hovered around, consistently. That same, over 1,500, which is, we go back to prior years where there was unlimited bill filings, and that number was significantly higher. So we're thankful that, kind of leadership in the House and Senate has certainly kind of limited a number of those bills. So it's less caption bills that we kind of have to deal with. We know what the bills are really more about. And then overall laws enacted, it's still pending through the Tennessee Secretary of State, through the public chapters. But we believe it's going to be consistently probably around that 500 plus number, which is very consistent, with other years. And you all can see public chapter numbers. I think Tennessee is known for the communication and website that we have, that it's extremely helpful. You can go back and watch videos. You can find public chapters. So if you have questions about bills or anything that passed, we encourage you all to look at that. Overall, it's an election year in Tennessee. So, the August primaries will be coming. There's going to be a lot of legislative activity. I think there were a total of about 7 retirements this year in the General Assembly, which is a little bit lower than we've seen in the past. But there's also a lot of primary and general challengers for a number of incumbents. And I know we'll be touching on that in some future events, taking a much deeper dive on the candidates that have filed in different races, really across Tennessee. So with that said, I want to introduce Logan Hess, Director of Legislation at the Tennessee Department of Revenue, who's going to walk us through one of the major pieces of bills that passed this session, and that is the changes in the franchise tax statute that the Chamber supported, worked with House, Senate leaders, the governor's office, and we were very thankful to get that through and appreciate their work, working together and coming to a compromise to really make sure that these changes happened and did not harm Tennessee in terms of any legal challenges that could have really jeopardized our state overall. So with that said, Logan, thank you so much for joining us. Logan is a good friend of the Chamber. We work with them on a number of bills that's filed, the Commissioner Giordano at Department of Revenue. So Logan, I will turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Bradley. I appreciate it. As Bradley mentioned, Logan Hess, the Legislative Director at the Department of Revenue. I know most of you are probably aware of what the bill does, but just in case, I'll do a quick overview of the bill, and then I'll address a few common questions that we've been getting, as well as some things that we're doing for implementation. So on April 25th, the General Assembly passed our franchise tax bill, which was Senate Bill 2103. House Bill 1893. The bill does 2 things. First, it eliminated the property measure from the franchise tax collection for tax years ending on or after January 1 of 24. Second, it authorized the department to issue franchise tax refunds to eligible taxpayers for a specific period of time. For anyone that has not yet filed their franchise tax return for 2023, please note they should file that 23 return based on the law that was in effect during that tax year. So that means that for tax years ending on or before December 31st of 23, taxpayers must complete both Schedule F, which is your net worth, and Schedule G, which is your property of the franchise tax return, then calculate the franchise tax due based on the greater of those 2 alternative tax bases. As I mentioned, this new law authorizes the department to issue franchise tax refunds to eligible taxpayers, and those taxpayers are those who paid the franchise tax on the property measure on a return filed on or after January 21, covering a tax period that ended on or after March 31st of 2020. So generally, that means that if you paid the franchise tax based on the property measure during tax years 20, 21, 22, or 23, you are eligible for that refund. The department is sending out letters to taxpayers that we have identified as potentially being eligible. These letters should be going out over the next couple of weeks. We've already started sending them out, and we will continue to do so in the coming weeks. We encourage everyone to review their records or consult a tax professional to determine if they qualify. One side note, if you paid the $100 minimum franchise tax, you're not eligible for these refunds. But as far as the refunds amounts go, the refunds are for a given tax year that will equal the amount of franchise tax paid based on the property measure minus the amount of the franchise tax that would have been paid based on the net worth measure for that same year. The department will not be issuing these refunds automatically. Taxpayers must apply for the refunds. Their refund claims must be submitted between May 15th and November 30th of this year. So today is the first day that you can start applying for these refunds. The claims must be filed using a 2-step process. First, the taxpayer must amend their returns for tax periods to be included in their refund. So they'll need to report the franchise tax on the amended returns using Schedule F. After the amended returns have been processed, the taxpayer must submit the new special refund claim form created specifically for this refund. The department's not going to be accepting your standard refund claim for this purposes. We really encourage all the taxpayers to amend their returns and file that special form electronically using TINTAP. However, if you're unable to do so, you may submit a paper amended return and a paper refund claim form. Just know that that's going to take significantly longer to complete that process. The new law also requires that before accepting a refund, taxpayers must agree to a couple of things. First, the taxpayer has to acknowledge that their name and the applicable range corresponding to the amount of their refund will be published on the department's website. There are three ranges, three categories of ranges. That is $750 or less, more than $750, but less than $10,000, and more than $10,000. Also, there's going to be names of any taxpayer that still got a refund that's pending on May 31st of 25. They'll be published on our website, but they will just be listed as pending without noting a range. That was something that came up in the conference committee there at the 11th hour. I'm sure a lot of you saw that. That was something that was agreed to. That pending range was agreed to there at the last minute. All of these names that are going to be published on the website will be there from May 31st through June 30th of 25. Second, the taxpayers accepting the refund must waive all of their claims and rights of action in any court against the department, the Commissioner of Revenue, State of Tennessee, or its employees, based on any theory that the franchise tax as it existed before the enactment of this bill was unconstitutional by failing the internal consistency test. The special reform claim that we have created will include these conditions, and it will require the taxpayer's signature before they can submit it. Quick or final update on the bill. A lot of people have been asking, when's the governor going to sign it? May 15th is coming up quick. For those of you that haven't seen, he signed it on the 10th. So this bill has been signed into law and is ready to go. So that's a quick recap of what the bill did. For implementation purposes, as I mentioned, we've already started sending out letters to eligible taxpayers, letting them know that they might qualify. As I said, those letters will keep going out over the next few weeks. We have issued an important notice on our website, which we do for all bills that pass that are tax related. That's got pretty detailed instructions on what taxpayers need to do throughout this refund process. Additionally, on our website, we've got a new page that is dedicated specifically to this, that includes refund claim form, that it includes the new form, some FAQs, some filing instructions, and some instructional webinars. We've got a whole team of people that have revamped or updated our systems to accommodate this. I won't get into and start all of the system upgrades that we've done. They are far smarter than I am in explaining what all those are. But we've been getting a lot of questions, as you could probably imagine, on what this bill does, how do we need to file, and stuff like that. So some of the common questions that we've been getting is a lot of people have asked how the new law impacts their franchise tax return for 23. So I want to quickly reiterate what I said at the beginning. For returns filed for tax years ending on or before December 31st of 23, the taxpayer must complete Schedule G and calculate that franchise tax based on the greater of Schedule F or Schedule G. Taxpayer who paid the franchise tax based on Schedule G for 23 will then request a refund using that special claim form. One of the reasons that 23 has to be completed that way is due to budgeting. Typically, refunds come out of our collections, but with this bill, it created a special fund that was set up to pay for these refunds so that they won't come out of collections next year. Another question that we've been getting is, around the deadlines. Again, the deadline to file that claim is November the 30th. We know that's a Saturday, but our systems will still be operating that day, and we'll be able to process those refund claims. And as I said, that refund period opens up today. Another question that we've been getting a lot of is, do I have to file electronically? As I said, we encourage everyone to do so, but no, you don't have to. We've got paper forms that are available. Another one that we've gotten a lot of is, will the department be issuing these automatically? No, you have to apply for these. We can't just give those out. We've also gotten a lot of questions around interest. And the interest will begin to accrue if a refund claim is not paid within 90 days of the department receiving the claim and a proper proof that the refund is due. The interest rate is going to be the federal rate for large corporate overpayments, which is currently sitting at 5.5%. And the last question that we've gotten a lot of has been pretty consistent is on the reinstatement of credits. And to the extent that the tax was paid on the original return with tax credits from Schedule D, which is your industrial machinery credit, job tax credit, et cetera, any previously applied tax credit in excess of those applied on the amended return using Schedule F will be reinstated to the taxpayer's account instead of being refunded. Those are the main questions that we have been getting that were fairly generic. We have gotten a lot of questions that are specific to a certain business. We've had a lot of taxpayers saying, well, here's my situation. What do I need to do? And we have to address those on an individual basis. That's really all I have for you all. I know that's pretty quick, and those are some general questions, but to Bradley, I wanted to say thank you to you and your team for all of the work that you all did on this bill throughout session. I think we talked more in the last month than we may have ever talked before that. So I really appreciate you and all the work that you all did. It was very beneficial. Thank you to all of you and your team for doing that. I know you all have got a tight schedule going on here. So if anybody has any questions, my email address is logan.hess@tn.gov. Feel free to shoot me any question y'all got. We'll be happy to take a look at it and get y'all the best answer that we can. We look forward to working with everyone and their partners on this, and we want to be as helpful as we possibly can. So whatever questions you've got, shoot them to me, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But Bradley, I will turn it back over to you so that you all can keep your meeting moving along.
Thank you, Logan. We appreciate everything you do and look forward to working with you again in the future. And everyone on this call can kind of just consider this a teaser. We are in the process of getting a longer meeting set up with the commissioner to discuss the franchise tax. Thank you, Logan, again. Next on the agenda, we have House Commerce Chairman, Representative Kevin Vaughn. Many of you know him, and for those of you who don't, he is wonderful to work with. He runs a very fun committee and takes pride in it. He really makes Tennessee a better place to do business. Chairman, thank you for being here. How you doing? I'm sure you're very glad session is over, and even more impressive that you're willing to join us today.
Well, thanks, Carrington. Flattery will get you everywhere.
Thank you so much for being here.
No, I'm happy to be on here and honored to get to say hello to everyone today.
Great. Well, just want to say again, thank you for being a pro-business advocate and for your service in Tennessee. You have a unique position as a House Commerce Chairman. Can you touch a little bit on the responsibility of chairing that committee? But you also work with two other people to help run the Commerce Committee. There's Chairman Boyd, who chairs the Business and Utility Subcommittee, and Chairman Powers, who chairs the Banking Subcommittee. Can you touch on your relationship with both of them and just how you all work together?
Oh, I do it all in spite of those guys. No, you know that's far from the truth. We have a very good teamwork that we have established a great working relationship with the subcommittee chairs, and we do operate as a team. We get together on a weekly basis and talk about bills that have been filed, what we see coming up, what the calendar looks like, what issues there are with bills. And so we try to get issues handled during the subcommittee. And if we don't get them worked out there, then we'll continue to work on legislation when it does reach the full committee. And from a personal viewpoint, what I try to do is I look at legislation that's in front of us through the prism of, does it promote free market principles of capitalism? That is primarily what I look at. And here recently, we've kind of gotten into a little bit of what is the workers' individual liberties versus what the investors and management of businesses, how do those two mesh? And it's been a little bit of a sticky situation coming out of the pandemic. That's been one of our challenges. The other thing that I try to do is just try to protect against businesses and consumers against the cost of just inordinate regulatory inflation. are we getting benefit to the rules that we pass, or are we just getting excess costs? And that's one of the things that I try to do. And then the last thing I'd point out on that is that I do like to, if we find that change is needed, because me, I'm a fan of gridlock. Less change for my business is better, as long as I know the rules. It's the changing rules that always seem to trip us up. Is that if we are going to be looking at rules or regulations or bills coming through that are going to eventually turn into laws, if there's going to be change, let's make it gradual as opposed to immediate, and give everybody a chance to adjust to them.
It's good.
Well, I know our members appreciate all of those perspectives you just highlighted. That's one of the reasons that you've been such a good ally to us, is the thoughtful approach, I think, that you take to these issues. So the jurisdiction of the Commerce Committee is broad, which means you work on bills dealing with a variety of topics. I think in 1 week you had both a bill dealing with crypto and the Indigent Burial Fund. So very, very different issues. But can you discuss some of the bills and some of the work that you're most proud of that you did this year, whether those are bills that you sponsored, supported, worked to amend, or even worked to defeat bills that might not have been in the best interest of the state?
Well, I think we actually do our best work in a preventative measure. We have a number of members, and particularly in the House, with our terms being 2 years, people really want to make an impact, and they're well-meaning, and they, there seems to be oftentimes the topic of the day. We have some people that if innovation is happening in the world, then by golly, we need a law to deal with it, and sometimes that's not the case. And so we've got to look at those. And with regards to things that I am pleased with, that we really gave an effort to this year, was the governor's name, image, and likeness bill that protected the music community with regards to AI intrusion, which basically would be the use of AI to steal someone's talent. And so, you look at that, and it got to be a pretty interesting conflict between the Motion Picture Association of America and the recording artists, the country music folks. And I thought it was funny. I had to tell the Motion Picture Association of America, I said, listen, I just got to tell you, as I said, with the people here, I said, you're asking me to support the Hollywood elite versus the people that tell me songs about my life inside my pickup truck on a daily basis. And I said, I hate to tell you, but you're behind the public relations curve already. But I'll have to say is that as they began to talk to us, I was picking up grains and kernels of truth in there that needed to be vetted and needed to be heard. And I think we made the bill a better bill by putting the brakes on the governor's proposed legislation and giving the entire community of the entertainment world to talk about it. And I think you can see now that as us, rather than us taking a heavy-handed approach, and I'm not saying the governor's bill was this, but if we were to rush out in reaction to new technologies entering the marketplace, while we may prevent someone from stealing someone's talent, but we also, there was a deal on, I believe 60 Minutes the other day, where AI is helping preserve Randy Travis's voice with his consent. I know that there's been YouTube TV has been into some technological innovation work with John Legend in his voice. And so we don't want to get in the way of technology progressing to make our lives better and to preserve the things that we want them to preserve. But at the same time, we need to stop the nefarious actors, and we need to concentrate on that rather than just throwing regulations in the way for the sake of saying, hey, we're hip and cool. And we know that things such as AI is a new emerging technology that needs our stamp of approval. I tend to go the other way on it, until it becomes apparent that the state has an interest in protecting something then let's let the free market dictate it.
Yeah, that's great. And I know you guys sat in or kind of dealt with hours and hours of testimony on that Elvis bill. And I think you also just do a great job. It's, there are issues where Tennessee should be the torchbearer, and there are issues that we need to keep looking and studying things a little bit longer. So that actually leads me in perfect for the next question. Most of the people on this call already know this because we at the chamber and with our members worked on the data privacy bill for the last 3 or so years, and you were instrumental on that. And I know many of the people on this call know that. I think each year we continue to see an uptick in tech bills, and you touched on a few. Can you kind of talk a little bit about the AI Council bill that you worked on quite a bit, and then talk about maybe why that's the correct approach for now? And then maybe talk about some of the other technology bills or how we deal with a measured approach to make sure they're not overly burdensome.
Yeah, you know, AI is one of these things that, frankly, I need to learn more about before I can know enough to regulate it. That's just kind of the way, and it is a rapidly expanding field. You know, nobody wants StarNet, threatening World War III, or we don't want robots taking over the world. That we can all agree on that. And if somebody wants to pass a law with that, then I'm cool with that. Let's outlaw robots taking over society. But what we don't want to do is AI is, as I see it fundamentally, is a tool that is available for people to introduce efficiencies into their organizations, to help improve, to help polish some work product that we've got to do, or that businesses produce. And so as we utilize it as a tool, then we've got to be able to see its value and to demonstrate its value. And what we did with the AI councils, we're going to be looking at how AI is used in the state government. How does it benefit us? What are things that we should be concerned about? At what point is there the crossover between benefit and threat? And I think we're far away from threat today. But at the same time, because right now, I think for AI to be developed that is nefarious, then it has to have a nefarious creator, and their intent has to be bad. And so that's what we've got to get. We've got to start at square one and start working our way through. And so what better lab than state government? Because then we're not imposing our will on someone else. We're trying to manage our own shop and figuring out how it impacts us. And let's take that. And if we find something there that we think should apply to a broader marketplace, then we'll review that with regards to whether or not the citizenry need to be exposed to it.
Awesome. So I know it feels like it's a long way off, but have you started thinking about anything you're looking at addressing next year that's going to be relevant to the business community?
Oh no, I'm not over my post-traumatic stress right now. This is a bad time to ask me. No, if I'm fortunate this year that I do not have a primary or general election opponent. First time in my career that's ever happened. So I'm enjoying the off season. And I serve at the pleasure of the Speaker of the House. And if he sees fit to return me to this role, then I'll just apply the new principles to what it is that we see. But one thing that if I see that we're probably bumping up the time, I was just going to encourage your membership to do two things. Number one is to get to know your representatives so that you can advocate to them your needs and requirements on a personal basis. That's, to me, one of the very critical things that need to be out there. The other thing is that if you like what we're doing, participate in races with regards to either endorsements or support. And sometimes that support can just be a phone call saying, man, we're glad you're there. And contributions to keep with regards to campaigning are also important, because what you want is for folks that you support and believe the same way, you're looking for continuity in decision-making positions. That's the most important thing, because I'm a different legislator today than I was my first year. And I couldn't have gotten it couldn't have developed without having the time to learn the process and the institution, as well as the issues of others. And so I would just encourage everyone you've got a great team at the chamber. They do a great job for you representing, and we meet weekly with them to discuss things. But there's no better advocate than yourself. And so get to know your representative, and if you want to keep them around, participate in the election process and make sure that they come back.
Thank you. I think that is great advice, and make sure everyone on this call continues to stay engaged, whether it's with you or their representative too. But we always appreciate what you do for the business community, and we're looking forward to working with you this summer and next year.
Hey, I appreciate the chance to say hello to everybody.
Thank you for being here. Hope you have a good rest of your day.
All righty, bye-bye.
We are going to switch gears now, and we're going to go through some of the bills that the chamber worked on throughout the session this year. We're not going to have time to highlight them all that are on this slideshow, but if you see a bill that we don't have time to cover, or that you're interested in, or if we don't answer the specific question that you have on a bill that we do talk about, our emails will be up at the end. I know a lot of you all have them already, but if you don't, we'll have them up there at the end. So you feel free to reach out to us so that we can get those questions answered. Excuse me. So first bill I'm going to just briefly touch on, because it's been discussed a couple of times already, is the franchise tax reform bill, Senate Bill 2103, House Bill 1893. I just really want to emphasize that this was a really big win for business. As we said earlier, we're talking about a $400 million recurring cut, $1.5 billion in refunds this year. So over the course of a decade, you're talking about billions of dollars in tax savings for businesses. And so I want to highlight two other pieces of the legislation. This was a challenge, I think, for everyone involved, from the Senate and the House to outside groups like ourselves, to get done, and certainly the governor's team as well, because I think there was a variety of different perspectives, and I don't want that to get lost in that this was really a collaborative effort that was not a slam dunk, that a lot of people worked on to get done, and we really appreciate all the folks that were involved in that process. And there was two things that changed, I think, in a major way from the original proposal that I think are worth highlighting. One is the provision in the bill that protects or allows businesses with credits to stay in the previous regime to pay on the alternative minimum measure if it raises their tax liability. And this was important because those credits that businesses have are assets on their books. And so if they are not able to use those assets are devalued. And so it was really important that we were able to get that provision into the bill to protect businesses that have worked with ECD in the state to get those credits. The second piece I do want to highlight is the disclosure piece. We are not in favor of disclosure of taxpayer information. But I do think it's important to note that the provision that is in the final bill looks a lot different than what was initially proposed when this proposal was first announced. And Logan covered this, but by going to ranges as opposed to exact dollar amounts, I think that was a really important change to make sure that you couldn't look at a business's exact refund amount and back out sensitive information about their operations, about their business. So I just wanted to highlight those two as big changes that the chamber was involved in securing. The second bill I'm going to talk about was Senate Bill 631. House Bill 1054. And this was a bill that Chairman Vaughn was a huge champion of and a huge supporter of. This falls into the category of bills that we need to come back next year to get done. So this was a chamber priority to redefine the regulatory scope of the state when it comes to wetlands. So there was a Supreme Court decision last year, a U.S. Supreme Court decision that significantly rolled back the federal regulatory jurisdiction over waterways of the United States, including wetlands, and so that created this new class of waters that were only regulated at the state level in Tennessee, because Tennessee has a very expansive water regulatory jurisdiction. Certainly compared to other states around us, most of those don't regulate anything that the federal government doesn't regulate. And so we felt like it was a good idea for the competitiveness of the state, of businesses in the state, just from a cost of living perspective, to bring us more in line with other states. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get this across the finish line because it got caught up with some other issues, I think, in the Senate, certainly in the Senate Energy Committee, and that committee wasn't able to get the bill out, unfortunately. So it was sent to summer study, but we will be coming back next year, I think, hopefully with Chairman Vaughn as once again our leading ally on the bill to look to address that. One other bill in the energy and environment space I want to address, because I think it was a really good example of what a rapid response from the chamber, but also from our members that we get engaged, looks like, and how it can be successful. Senate Bill 1958, House Bill 2436 would have created a private right of action against anyone producing an odor. I think this was meant to address or seen as a response to a local issue. But as you can imagine, this was very concerning for us because many of our members, many of you all, have operations that can produce something that smells, whether it's good, bad, who's to say? It's very subjective. And so to create this private right of action, I think would have, and public right of action as well, would have created a huge problem in the state for business. But we were able to, we found out about this kind of right at the last minute before it was a caption bill with an amendment, and we found out about the amendment very late, but we were able to mobilize a lot of folks to reach out to their lawmakers and say, hey, why are you going to do this? This will impact my operation in your district. And so it ended up that the bill never even came up for a vote in committee. And I think that is almost entirely because, again, of the rapid response that members of the chamber had once we found out about the issue. A couple of workforce bills that I'll flag for you. The first is Senate Bill 1947, House Bill 2058. So this requires the State Board of Education to review and study substitutes for Algebra 2 as a requirement for high school graduation. We think this is a really kind of a bill that reflects a really smart approach to getting folks into the workforce, and that's that we need flexibility. Not everyone's on the same path. There are different pathways to work, and so what the bill says is that if you students that are not on a STEM or four-year college track who won't maybe need to use Algebra 2, let's see if we can figure out a different course that checks the requirement for Algebra 2, because we've seen this is a huge stumbling block for students graduating, and it's much better for them to graduate and that creates a much better chance for them to go on to productive career and get into the workforce. One other point about this bill I think is important is I don't, some people might wonder, does this water down education by removing the Algebra 2 requirement? I don't think that's true at all. In fact, one thing we saw is that for students that did need Algebra 2, their experience was being watered down in Algebra 2 because the course had to move slower. Maybe it didn't get to everything because of trying to address kind of a wide range of needs in the classroom. And so this should actually help improve the experience for everybody. And again, that flexibility, I think, for putting kids on the right path for them, for what their career is going to look like, I think is really important. Last bill I'm going to touch on is I think a bill that is reflective of a class of bills that we have seen more and more of, and we expect to see more of. And this is Senate Bill 2859, House Bill 1841, which would have prevented companies that have operations in countries of concern. So you can imagine what that list looks like. We see this in other bills: China, Russia, Iran, but really the point of this kind of class of bills is to get at the business relationship with China. And so it would have prevented companies that had those links from participating in the state's procurement process, so from bidding on contracts with the state. And in this instance, we were able to defeat this bill in subcommittee. I think once folks started hearing from businesses that have operations in China, that sell product in China, that were concerned about their being shut out from the procurement process, it really helped. But I do think there are going to be other bills that are harder to address that are kind of in this class, and I do think we're going to see more of them. So I just wanted to flag that one as something that we did well, but something that I think we need to think more about in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrington. She's going to hit on a few more bills in this from this session.
Perfect. Thank you, RJ. And just want to reiterate all the things that Bradley and RJ have mentioned, and just really is a privilege to work on behalf of you all. So I'm only going to touch on one bill on this slide before moving on, and that is the English only driver's license bill. This is a bill that we've talked about quite a bit this year in our Monday calls and in our capital update as well. That's Senate Bill 1717, House Bill 1730. And this is the bill that would require all written driver's license exam to be administered in English only. The legislation would prohibit the use of a translation dictionary, an electronic device, or an interpreter, all which is currently allowed. Currently 5 languages are allowed, including English, but also Spanish, Korean, German, and Japanese. The chamber was opposed to this legislation because we believe that it would negatively impact the business community and also the ability of legitimate employees and their families working in Tennessee to obtain their driver's license and commute to work. Also, some of these companies from some of these countries have invested billions of dollars into Tennessee and have employed hundreds of thousands of Tennesseans. Tennessee would be one of a few states to enact such stringent requirements. So we are thankful that that did not pass. We just think that it would be an unnecessary and overly burdensome to the business community and those employees who speak languages other than English. So that did not move forward this year. I'm going to move on to workers' compensation, human resources, and labor. Again, RJ mentioned that we're not going to be able to have time to touch on all of these, so we will have a comprehensive legislative results report coming out in about a month or so. So any of these that we don't touch on, they'll be in that. And then also our contact information will be coming up for you all to reach out to us on any of those. But I am going to touch on the clarification of work bill. This is Senate Bill 2027, House Bill 2110. This was a chamber priority that many of you all worked with us on, and very grateful for your engagement and your input. So this bill, kind of the background, was brought because of class action lawsuits filed in states across the country where trial attorneys are targeting businesses by trying to expand or distort what work means. And so we brought legislation this year to help businesses avoid litigation, and that's exactly what this bill does. It clarifies what constitutes as work for hourly and wage workers following federal standards and codifies something called a de minimis exception. De minimis basically just means insignificant time that's difficult for employers to keep track of as well as employees. An example of this would be when an hourly wage worker is coming from their car to their building and walking through security. We know that that is part of that person's commute. It's not compensable, but there are some trial attorneys filing these class action lawsuits trying to make it compensable. There are multiple cases, especially in the Southeast, and then, of course, other states like California. So again, these standards already exist at the federal level. We're just codifying that and saying that Tennessee also follows that. So there's less ambiguity if there ever is a case that gets brought up. So we just think that this is a proactive measure to help protect businesses from this litigation. And then one more that I'll mention on this slide, that is the bathroom bill. The chamber does not typically get involved in any sort of social bill unless it has a direct impact to business. And this bathroom bill, Senate Bill 2781, is a perfect example of that. If enacted, it would have created a new cause of action for employers that aren't policing and monitoring their bathrooms properly. If this would have passed, businesses would have faced significant legal risk, say if the opposite sex went into a bathroom that was not theirs. So that one did not pass as well this year. And we haven't seen this bill in a couple of years. Would not be surprised if it comes up again, but we'll keep watching out for things like that. And then moving on to technology, tort reform, and legal. Want to touch on what we call the wiretapping amendment. This is the amendment on business website and wiretapping lawsuits. This is an issue that came up the last 2 or 3 weeks of session. It's not one that we originally had a part of our agenda, but when we were made aware of the issue, became an urgent issue to add to our agenda. Really did feel like it was very impactful for the business community. So I'll briefly touch on what the issue is, kind of the chamber's involvement process, and then what the bill does. So essentially here we're seeing business website lawsuits on the rise across the country. There are multiple cases in Tennessee, or many are being threatened, and really any industry could be targeted with these lawsuits. Any company that has a website, which is most companies, and if you use basic internet technology, third-party technology, whether that's cookies or pixels, you could be a target for one of these lawsuits. What the trial attorney, what some of them are claiming is that if you have that technology and a user is clicking around on your website, that would be considered an interception and would violate a wiretapping statute. So Tennessee's wiretapping statute was put into effect in 1994 when the internet was at its infancy. So it was designed to criminalize the interception of oral, wire, or other electronic communication. Old school phone tapping, organized crime. It most certainly was not trying to get at businesses' websites. So this really is just a perverse use of the statute. Tennessee has very strong wiretapping protections. In the criminal section of code, and not only is it a Class D felony, but it would also grant the injured party the ability to sue for $10,000 per violation. What trial attorneys are arguing is that this would be $10,000 per person per click, which obviously that would get to an astronomical cost very quickly. Large concerns with that. Again, any industry with a website could be impacted by this. So we were made aware of this issue. With it being so close to the end of session, there are a lot of obstacles that came up with this. One being, we felt like this needed to be addressed this year. We knew that there might be some pushback from the trial attorneys, but also there's just not a lot of bills left. We had to find a bill that opened up Title 39, which is where the wiretapping section is. And so at this point, there are many bills that are either passed completely or have failed. So we needed to find some that were still moving through the process, and we had to narrow it down by sponsor to make sure that there was the ability to pass it. And again, just make sure that it's still moving. So we think Senate Bill 221, House Bill 1658, that was the best avenue for us. Even though there were still some challenges with that bill itself. It wasn't a bill that went through without any opposition. It was in its original form, had some controversy. It had to do with violations for attacking jurors and judges. So there were Republicans and Democrats that voted no on this bill in its original form. And at this point, it had already passed the Senate, but it was behind the budget in the House, needed funding, which again, in a tight budget year, that is another challenge. But we met with both the House and Senate sponsor. We met with leadership and chairman of committees to tell them about this issue, the impact we think it could have on businesses in Tennessee, and then also just that what is happening with this statute is wrong and it is perverse use of the statute and it needs to be fixed. Was never its intent. So both the sponsors agreed. They did want to make sure that it didn't tank their original bill, but agreed to add this amendment. So what we had to do was add the amendment to the House version, pass that out of finance, get it onto the floor, and then the Senate had to substitute and conform, which was a little rocky at first. We didn't want the bill to get sent back to committee because that would effectively kill it for the year. But what the amendment ended up doing is clarifying that Tennessee's wiretapping statute does not apply to businesses using common website technology, and it removes the statute civil penalties because, again, this is in the criminal section code, and it also removes the threat of lawsuits against businesses for just simply operating a website while running their business. So this one, we did get across the finish line. We're very excited about that because we think that it will be very good for the business community. We have members and we know multiple businesses who have been sued in other states. So not going to let that happen in Tennessee and looking forward to this completely going into effect. As I'm wrapping up, just quickly, just on the theme of AI, we had Chairman Vaughn talking about the AI Advisory Council that he played a big role in. Again, we just think with the rise in tech bills that this is the right approach. Let's study AI before we begin to regulate it. With this council, specifically 2 members of the business community are appointed. We think that's right, as the business community is going to play a big role in AI. They need to have a seat at the table. So we're very grateful for that approach. The other side of things is the disclosure on content generated by AI. That's Senate Bill 2431. This would have mandated disclosures on content generated by AI. A number of reasons we were concerned with that. The biggest being it is just so broad how it was currently written that if I sent someone an email that I used AI assistance and it didn't have a disclosure, there could be a cause of action, and it opened up a private right of action and had high penalties. So I just think there's a lot of unintended consequences with that. And we plan on talking with you all over the summer to because this bill is going to come up again. We want to find a good definition of AI. We had a lot of positive feedback this past session. We'll continue to work on that with you all and find the right balance. So we'll keep you all updated on that. And then just as I'm wrapping up, we always see gun postage bills. We've had a lot of feedback from you all, and you guys reached out to a lot of legislators, which is really impactful. And even just as Chairman Vaughn said, it means a lot coming from businesses in their areas as well. There's probably 3 posting bills that try to make businesses posting rights meaningless and impacts that business's personal property rights. So none of those passed this year. We successfully opposed all of those, and we'll continue to do that next year, as well as any business mandate we are going to work to oppose. So I'm about to turn it over to Sarah just real quickly. Here's our contact information. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions. We want to answer those and get more feedback from you all for this session and next year. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah now, who's going to provide a TAC update.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. So a key part of our government relations strategy is the ability to support and elect pro-business candidates. And we do that through our political arm, the Tennessee Chamber PAC. The Chamber PAC is nonpartisan. We are focused on electing the best candidates who understand and represent the needs of business and industry. We firmly believe that good policy starts with electing good policymakers, and that really shapes our whole strategy around our PAC. So as we've wrapped up the legislative session, we have now gone full steam ahead into campaign season. We have a primary here in Tennessee on August 1st, where voters will vote for U.S. Senate, where Senator Blackburn is the incumbent, the U.S. House, even numbered districts in the Tennessee Senate, and then the Tennessee House of Representatives. And then, of course, the general election will be Tuesday, November 5th, where we'll see a really interesting federal House and Senate map. And then, of course, the big ticket on everyone's mind, the presidential election. So a lot of big races at the top of the ticket for the general, which I think will have some impacts on turnout and, may cause some interesting things to happen in some of our local races. So as kind of an overview of what we're seeing moving into the primary season, here in Tennessee, we have 1 Senate retirement, 7 House retirements, 7 Senate Republican primaries, 12 House Republican primaries, and then a handful of seats that could flip either way, either from Democrat to Republican or Republican to Democrat. So it's going to be a really interesting and active campaign season here. And because of that, we are planning to be super active through the Tennessee Chamber PAC. We have a really aggressive investment strategy. Again, we want to make sure that we're electing the best candidates for the business community. So really encourage you to think about ways that you can engage with us, how you can support. The Chamber PAC can accept personal, corporate, or PAC contributions. So there are multiple ways to give. We're going to have 2 events upcoming over the next couple of weeks to kind of dive more into the political landscape here in Tennessee and our strategy moving forward. So the first is a political and election update, which will be next Tuesday, May 21st at 10 a.m. Chip Saltzman, who's a top political strategist here in Tennessee and then nationally, will lead that for us. He'll go through, of course, the map here in Tennessee, but then also touch on some federal races, what the House and Senate map look like nationwide, and then, of course, how the presidential election is shaping up. Then the following week, Thursday, May 30th, we'll have our Tennessee Chamber PAC board meeting at 10 a.m. This will be open to just PAC contributors, and this is where we will really dive into the nitty-gritty of our investment strategy, races that we think are going to be really important to us, candidate profiles, who we are recommending support to and why. So I encourage you to join both or either of those. If you can't make those times work, let me know and we're happy to give you an individual briefing. But thank you again. It's going to be a really important election season this year, and we'd love to have your help.
Thank you, Sarah. And just to wrap up, a few things looking ahead that we want to make you all aware of. Of course, like I said, RJ mentioned as well that our results report will be coming out in the next month, so you can look more at the issues that we dove into this session. Our DC fly-in is going to be September 9th through the 11th. You'll want to make sure that you get to go to that. There will be briefings from the chamber. We'll have Tennessee Tuesday with Senator Hagerty and Senator Blackburn. We'll make sure to meet with our federal partners, whether that's the U.S. Chamber, NAM, ACC. There will be multiple receptions. We love to do a baseball game, more congressional visits. We'll send out more information on that soon. Hope that you can make that. It's a really great event. Want you to also mark your calendars for the next day recap event. We typically do this after the primary election. So like Sarah said, the state primary election is on August 1st. So you can expect our recap to be on August 2nd. We'll reach out with more information on that. We'll dive in more on what the result of those primaries are. And then again, we've talked about the Your Vote Matters program. I want to make sure you all stay aware of that. It's what we do with the Secretary of State's office, and the Your Vote Matter program gives businesses the opportunity to have voter registration drives and encourage employees to vote. So it's very important. We want businesses to be engaged in Tennessee because we know that's the most effective way to have a growing business community. And then also mark your calendars for our 2025 opening legislative reception. That is going to be the second Tuesday in January. I believe that's January 6th. So it's a great opportunity to connect with lawmakers, business leaders, and chamber staff. So that is all we have for you today. We will stay in touch. This is also being recorded, so we'll make sure to share that with everyone as well. But I just want to thank everyone for this year and having a productive session. And we are certainly glad it's over, but enjoy working with you all so much. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you.